Hey everyone, it's Miss Linder, and here we are doing lesson 26, parallel and perpendicular lines. All right, so let's talk about parallel and perpendicular lines, what they look like. Remember that parallel lines are going to be across from each other. They will never intersect. So basically parallel means that they're going to have the same slope. So the run and the rise of the parallel lines will be the same. It just happens that they start on different points on the y-axis. Okay? So that's super important to remember because we are going to be using perpendicular and parallel lines. Now, perpendicular are ones that actually intersect and have a 90-degree angle. Okay? So that's on top of a coordinate grid. So basically their slope, this is a negative line, and that's a positive line. Their slope is going to be opposite of each other. All right, so let's look at what they tell us. All right, so parallel lines, they tell us, have the same slope. So if I had y equals 1/2 x plus 3, a parallel line to that would be y equals 1/2 x, same slope, and maybe I say subtract 3. They're going to be parallel because of the slope. The slope is the same. All right, with perpendicular lines, we have to do the negative reciprocal. All right, so let's say that we have y equals 1/2 x plus 3. The negative reciprocal, so that means the negative flip-flop, would be a negative 2x plus 3. So the slope here is a positive 1/2. The opposite of that, the reciprocal of that, is a negative, and it's 2/1. Now let me change it up a little bit. Let's say we start with a negative 2x plus 3, and we want the perpendicular line. So that means we're going to have negative reciprocal, which means you're multiplying it by a negative reciprocal. So we're going to have a positive 1/2 plus 3. So if we start with a negative, we're going to end with a positive. If we start with a positive, we're going to end with a negative. And they have to be the reciprocal of each other. Simple as that. Okay, I have on my notes this line, and I know sometimes it's difficult for us when we're creating graphs and lines to put the line exactly on the intersections, so I've gone ahead and dotted this one for you. So make sure that you have the same dots as I do. All right, so it says that we're going to have a parallel line to the line below that passes through negative 1, 3. So the first thing we have to do is we have to come up with this equation. So that means we're doing exactly as we've done before. We need the slope. We need the b, and then we need the equation. So we're doing the exact same process that we've been doing. This time, instead of receiving the slope or getting 2 points to find the slope, we're given the graph to look for the slope. So I run 2 and rise 1. So my slope is 1/2. So now I have to plug in that knowledge with negative 1, negative 3, and come up with the equation. So we're going to plug in negative 3 as y, 1/2, negative 1, plus the b. So that gives us a negative 1/2 plus b equals a negative 3. We're going to add a half to both sides. So our new b is negative 2.5. So our new equation is y equals negative 1/2 x subtract 2.5 because it's a negative. Now, let's double check that our new line matches what they've asked us. They want a parallel line. So let's see. We have 1/2 in the line we have, and that would make this a parallel line. So I'm going to go and graph it so that you can see. So a -2.5, run 2 and up 1, run 2 and up 1. So as you can see, these would be parallel lines, but they have different y-intercepts. All right, let's go ahead and put our dots on the line. See that it intercepts at certain sections. You need at least 3 to be able to determine the slope. And I need to now find a perpendicular line below. So I'm going to box in that word perpendicular so that when I go back and double check that I have made sure that I did the negative reciprocal. So let's start with our slope. So we run 2 and drop 3. The slope of this line is run 3 and drop 2. Now, we have to have a perpendicular line. So that is now going to be the negative reciprocal. So put a big arrow because we need to make it a positive and it's flip-flopped. Okay? The previous question, we had to keep it parallel, so we kept the same slope. But here we need to flip because it's perpendicular. And now all we do is the same process as we've been doing all week. We have the slope, so now we're going to find the b. So I'm going to plug in 4, 1 times 3/2 plus b. That gives me 3/2 plus b equals 4. I know that this is 1 1/2. So I'm going to be adding a negative 1 1/2 to both sides. Gives you 2.5 is equal to b. So our new equation uses the new slope and our new b. So the new equation is y equals 3/2x plus 2.5. So now let's graph it. So 2 1/2, run 2, rise 3, and then backwards 2, and down 3. And you'll notice that our lines become perpendicular. All right, for number 3, I'm going to box in the word perpendicular because we have to remember to do the negative reciprocal. So my slope at this time is run 5, rise 2. So I need to make sure that I change that to its negative reciprocal. And now I plug in that new slope to find the b. I can cross reduce here. I'm going to make that a positive so I can see that negative. So that gives me a negative 10. So 9 is equal to b. So our new line, the equation would be y equals -5/2. There's our new slope because it had to be the perpendicular negative reciprocal plus 9. Now I can't go ahead and graph that. It just happens to be, of course, these are copy and pasted. If it's not able to be graphed, then, because this line apparently was not done by 3s, which we could have done, but just be cautious that if it can be, if you can't graph it, make sure that you have your new lines equation next to the graph. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put the dots on the line so that you know exactly where they go. And then you're going to do this one on your own. Okay, go ahead and do number 4 on your own. All right, let's see how you did. You should have gotten a parallel line, which means we keep the slope. The slope was run 7 and rise 1. We multiplied that by 1, and you got 1/7. And I changed the 1 to 7 over 7 because that is still a whole, and I can use that with my fraction. So then I added the negative 1/7 to both sides, and it gave me 6/7 is equal to b. So my new equation has the same slope because it's parallel, and it's y equals 1/7 x plus 6/7, which you're going to say, Miss Linder, that's not a decimal, and let me change that. All right, here is it. It is on the bottom. Whenever you're faced with a funky decimal, we're just going to make sure that we have at least 3 place values passed. So here you have y equals 1/7 x plus 0.857. And many of you went, how in the world, how in the tarnation do I graph that? Well, unfortunately, coming up with these problems, sometimes we just come up with them and we're not quite sure how the result will be. But if it's able to be graphed, we're going to graph it. And we're going to talk about which ones on the prep work that you will be expected to do a graph. Okay, here we do not have a graph. So all they want is the new line. So I want you to make sure you're going to do several of these on your own. So the first thing I want you to do is always look for what type of line you're expected to create. So this is a parallel. This is a parallel. So that means both those slopes will stay the same. So we have our slope in this equation is 6 over 1. We're going to solve for b, and then we're going to write the new equation. The next one, we're going to solve. We have the slope already, a negative 2 over 1. We're going to solve for b, and we're going to write the new equation. All right, you go ahead and do number 5 and 6. It's exactly what we've been doing. Nothing has changed. So go ahead and do 5 and 6 on your own. All right, let's see how you did. On the first one, we plugged in 0, 0, which meant that the b became 0. So our slope was, or our equation was now y equals 6x. If you added the plus 0, that's not necessary. Take it off. And number 6, we have plugged in the negative 2 over 1 for slope. We plugged in 5 for y and negative 3 for x, and we solved, and we found that the b was at a negative 1. So we wrote our new equation, which is y equals negative 2x, subtract 1. All right, number 7. I see parallel, but I also see perpendicular. So when you see the word perpendicular, you probably need to start. This happens a lot. This is where students get things wrong, is because they forget to do the negative reciprocal. So make sure that you are pointing out to your brain that you must do the flip-flop here. So do number 7 and do number 8 on your own. All right, number 7, we plugged in negative 6 and negative 4. We solved for b, and we got negative 20. So your new line should be y equals negative 7 over 2x subtract 20, because it needed to be parallel, which means the slope is exactly the same. All right, number 8, the slope to begin with was 2 over 1, so I made sure that I did the negative reciprocal, which was a negative 1/2. Plug that in with the 0, 0, the origin, which gave b, of course, as 0, and then that gave me the equation of y equals a negative 1/2 x. Now here's what I would do, is if I see a star, because your brain is saying you need to make sure that you check that the slope is the negative reciprocal. All right, number 9, on your own. All right, so we should have boxed then that it was perpendicular, which means I'm going to have the negative reciprocal of the positive 1 slope. I plugged that in with my x and y that they gave me, and I found b to be 10. So my new equation would be y equals negative x plus 10. Remember, we don't need the 1 in front of the x. It's unnecessary. All right, number 10, I'm going to again box this in because it says perpendicular. And oh, that's not fair. They did not give me the slope. Oh my, oh dear, whatever shall I do? Well, I guess we're going to have to find slope on our own. So we're going to find slope first. So we have 2, 2, and 4, 4, 2 minus 4, and 2 minus 4. That gives you negative 2 over negative 2, which gives you a positive 1. That's the original slope. So m is equal to 1. However, this is where students go wrong. They don't do the perpendicular. So right now, I need to be totally making sure that my brain makes that a negative 1 because that's the new slope. So the new slope is a negative 1. The ordered pair that we have to use is a negative 1, 2. We're going to find the b and give our new equation. So we're going to plug in 2 equals negative 1 times a negative 1 plus b. That means 2 is equal to 1 plus b. Subtract 1 from both sides. 1 is equal to b. So our new equation is the new slope, because it was perpendicular to the 2 points they give us, as a negative x plus 1. That's the new equation. All right, so go back through this problem. First thing we do is find slope. This is the line that's already graphed. We want a perpendicular line to it, so we have to find the original slope, do its negative reciprocal, and then solve for b just like we've been doing. All right, number 11 on your own. All right, here we go. So the first thing I had to do is find slope of the original line. So I took and did my slope formula, and I received a negative 2 over negative 4, which reduces to 1/2. My slope stays the same because this says parallel. Parallel means I keep the same slope. So I plugged in 1/2 with the new point of 1, 2, and I found that my new b was at 1.5. So I used my new slope, or the same slope because it's parallel. So y equals 1/2 x plus 1.5. All right, this has been lesson 26, parallel and perpendicular lines. Thanks for watching.